The way I found Ed, I love the internet. I was watching Kitt Vs Karr, and occasionally as I'm watching episodes of things, I'll go, wonder whatever happened to that guy, wonder what happened to her, or whatever. So I just started Googling Ed Crick. Well, I started seeing things show up in Alabama, in Huntsville. And there was a thing for the Huntsville Food Bank, and there was this Ed Crick. I was like, how many Ed Cricks can there be? Of course, I don't know. There's probably a bunch of Cricks in Huntsville. So I took a shot, and I called the food bank, and the phone rings, and it says, hello, Ed Crick. And I said, Ed Crick, the actor? He goes, who is this? And I said, well, I'm not a psycho stalker, but I put on a Night Rider show in Atlanta, Georgia, and want to see if you might be interested in coming. He said, well, let me get back with you. So he actually called me back a few minutes later on his cell phone, because I'm sure he didn't want to get in trouble at work. So he said, look, here's my number so that you have it, and we'll get back. So we've been corresponding back and forth, and here we are. So here's Ed Crick, or as he was known in the episode, Eddie. And trivia thing, it's only in the script for Kitt Vs Karr. Eddie's last name, because it's called Mr. D's, Eddie's last name is Dexter. So that's what the D stands for.
Another Dexter.
Another Dexter. So I know Jeff Osterhage was the one that wore the Mr. D's shirt.
He had the cutoff.
He had the cutoff. And
he had the six-pack.
Little gay gym shorts and all that.
The shorts, though, they were a little too short. That was
So I figured if it's his boat shop, at some point he would be wearing one of the T-shirts. So
I didn't have one of these in the episode.
No, get the custom truck and they put his name across the front of the shop. But anyway, I thought, that'd be a cool little thing. We'll get that for Ed. So, although I'm really thinking there's something else missing, and I know what it is.
Oh no. In Hollywood, we hug each other.
and it fits. And it fits. You gave me your head size.
Well,
I lied to you and I said we might be doing caps for the event.
The thing is, when he asked me for a head size, their head size is 7 3/4 and all. I just had my wife with a measuring tape, and we just sent him those inches. So I don't know what, it's a 7 1/2. I didn't know that.
Well, I got close. There was 7, and then the next thing up was 7. I think
it fits. I mean, I could bring it down. Do my ears like that. No,
I mean, it's isn't it eerie? Almost 30 years later, he's got the hat and all that. I almost thought he was going to grow the beard out for this, but that's we're not going to go that fanboy on him.
I've had a lot of beards. I've had Gabby Hayes beards in my life. So I'm a beard guy, but
well, you're not obligated to wear that all day. I just thought it'd be cool, and maybe for some photo ops, and some of the people want to get pictures with you, and this, that, and the other. And it's like people just won't believe it. I mean. I got probably 90%. I think I got about 90% on the patch. The patch, if you compare them side by side, it's pretty close, but most people wouldn't know.
I think this hat is more upscale than the hat I was wearing. This is
well, there's even nicer ones. But that's what they call the yacht cap. I'm not going to tell you.
So. It's a nice quality hat.
It is.
It's got some.
I tried calling Universal Wardrobe, and no, I was kidding. Well, anywho, I'm going to turn it over to you. There's a nice, fresh cup of water here up here for you in your bottle. And
anyway, I want to thank this guy for his enthusiasm and tracking me down the way he did, and give him a double, triple ovation here. When I got that call, of course, I'll tell you, there's a saying, how often I saw where I should be going, only by setting out for somewhere else. And I forgot who wrote that line, but it's kind of like my life. You know, I've reinvented myself on several occasions, and but to be brought back into this world of, you know, because when I was an actor in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and out in LA, this get-together here is kind of like, oh, it's like a reunion of all of that stuff, because when you do those shows, you know, like Airwolf or Remington Steele or Rockford, it's all a community thing, and you run into the same people all the time, and the same people are working different shows, and it's, I mean, it's a dream job. Having worked in Hollywood, you know, how I got involved in acting is like a very strange set of circumstances. When I was in the elementary school, and they wanted everybody to participate in the Mayflower Landing little play, right? The whole idea of participating in that and being forced to participate in that made me feel like I wanted to run away from home. I didn't want to participate in it. The whole idea of it made me so nervous just thinking about it. I was a little boy, I couldn't sleep at night. Because, oh my God, that was coming up, and how am I going to be able to be on stage and say lines and be this character in the Mayflower and in the Indians and all that kind of stuff. And every day it got closer and got closer. And I was just like traumatized little child. You know, stage fright was, you know, most people, stage fright is the biggest thing that they're afraid of in life. But I was way, way beyond. I was like psychotic stage fright, you know. So anyway, when it came time to do that performance, I was shaking like a leaf, and I went up to the teacher and I told her, I said, Miss Parker, and I had a southern accent, and I can't do this. Would you say the lines for me, and then I'll move my mouth, and you know, so actually, and I gave her that news right before we did it, you know, right before. So she, you know, she had to jump in and do this because I wasn't going to be able to do anything, and she stood behind me and read the lines that I was supposed to read in her regular woman's voice, which is, you know, I don't know, just, and my mouth moved like that. So that was my first introduction to acting. So most of the time you'll find when you talk to actors, they have very, very low self-esteem, and they combine that with being like an egomaniac, and the next thing you know, they get beyond that fear, you know. So anyway, that's kind of like, how many of you out there have ever wanted to be an actor or do a television show like Knight Rider and play one of those characters? There are a handful out there. I think there's probably more too. I just think anybody, when you look at these actors on TV and they're guest starring on these shows, or they have one line on these shows. When I started out, I had one line or one scene with James Garner 4 different times. But I was on the Rockford Files, or Christy Lover, and then, you know, gradually the parts got bigger and bigger, and Airwolf, and Highway to Heaven, and Simon & Simon, and all those kind of shows. So I was called Steady Eddie. I had a steady kind of growth through the industry. I started out in the theater. First it was pre-med, then it was theater, and then it was 68 to 70 was a Vietnam thing that I got involved in, and I didn't want to, but nobody shot at me, but I lucked out. But anyway, when I got out of the Army, I went back to UCLA, and it was all about theater, and then at that time, well, at any time, you can't do a television show or a movie unless you have a SAG card. And you can't get a SAG card unless you know, so somehow the two have got to get together on the same day. And luckily for me, a guy at Universal decided that he wanted me to do a part on Get Christie Love. Anybody ever heard of Get Christie Love? Okay, we talked about it last night. We talked about all this stuff last night. And so I was able to get into SAG, and that's the whole thing got started that way. But when he called